It's about to get a little more live. Crank that, son. Yeah. Turn it on up. I've never heard this song in my life. I have no idea what I'm listening to.
Just B-Boys in the cut, son.
B-Boys in the cut. Coming at you on the Fish Life Podcast. What's going on, folks? We got a good time in store for you tonight. It's the Bassmaster Elite Series Tournament. Pickwick, Lake Pickwick, post-game show with none other than G to the D to the P, Greg DePalma is going to be joining us live here in a few minutes. We're going to break down what we saw at Pickwick. We're going to talk to Greg about tour life, the tournament series going forward, just anything. Y'all ask questions. Tell you what, why don't we invite you guys to talk to Greg DePalma along with us tonight. Chris, good to have you back, son. Give me that. Is that Dr. Pepper?
That's GDP.
Yeah. Cheers, y'all. All right, fade that out, Chris. Why am I wearing my sunglasses indoors? I'm trying to look cool, man. We're just trying to be a little gangster. We got one of them East Coast hands coming in here tonight, so I was trying to be a little gangster in the beginning of this one. Greg DePalma, like I said, folks, is going to be joining us here in just a few more minutes. Before we do, we want to get into our opening segment that we always do, the old Redneck Science. Redneck Science says get your cold towels, put them in the cooler, and rotate them throughout the day around your head and neck because it is hot, son. It's about to be over 100 degrees, they're forecasting, by the end of the week this week in Texas, and in the 90s the rest of the time this week. That is terrible. But it's also beautiful, Chris.
We're getting to that time of year where a lot of people are starting to worry about why the grass ain't growing, and if you're one of those people, stop worrying about that.
Yeah.
Get in your boat, go to the lake, get offshore, find you some structure, drag you a big worm.
Especially if you're going to go to Lake Fork, because right now with Lake Fork being low and there being such a lack of shoreline cover and underwater vegetation, no hydrilla coontail to speak of, this is what we want, guys. This hot weather is going to make dang near every fish in that pond go do the same thing. And anytime you get a situation where all the fish are pretty much doing the same thing, it gets really, really good. Like the offshore bite, as good as it has been, is about to get even better. It's going to be more consistent. It's going to stay throughout June, July, August. You guys at the Owners Tournament, we're going to talk about it all week. Y'all going to have a time this weekend if you can get on an offshore spot. The bad thing about it makes the lake fish smaller. The good thing about it, it eliminates most of the water column for you. It makes it really simple to know how to pattern fish and what you should be doing. And it just increases your odds of having a great day. So Billy Ray's Redneck Science says, as bad as it's going to suck to be out in that heat, you ain't really going to feel it too much because you're fixing to be catching them offshore this year on Lake Fork, Jack.
Get your big plug, get your football jig, get your big worm, big perm.
Big perm! Flutter spoon. Hey,
Flutter spoon.
We watched them at Pickwick throwing a flutter spoon. Speaking of Pickwick, man.
You know, I was actually surprised at how many flutter spoons I saw being thrown because I know those guys throw them a lot, but...
Well, there's been some new innovation on flutter spoons to help them keep the fish hooked
Correct.
up. Because flutter spoons are an issue. Fish throw flutter spoons a lot. On the traditional flutter spoons, they throw them a lot. Now we've got ones with 3 treble hooks on them.
I forgot who I saw that was on live today. I want to say it was Fouts.
Fouts had that 3 hook.
Yes.
That 3 hook spoon. He sure did.
Yeah. And I remember looking at that thinking, man, I've only seen a few of those. But that's pretty...
Yeah, I've never seen that until today. That was pretty unique.
You saw Zaldane throw one today. You saw Palaniuk throw one. You saw Fouts throw one. You saw...
What's really cool to me to watch a tournament in East Tennessee or whatever it is, West Tennessee, I don't know where it is in Tennessee, around that Alabama test, I guess it's West Tennessee.
Yeah.
But in that Tennessee River area, a long ways from Lake Fork. Guys, that flutter spoon started at Lake Fork. Mr. Joe Spates was the man that invented it.
That's right.
Kelly Jordan kind of exposed it to the country. That is a Lake Fork technique that is now a nationwide big bass catcher. It's really cool to watch that part of it. You know, we could sit here and tell you, first of all, congratulations, Brandon Lester. You kind of won that one going away and dominated. What an amazing event. But we could sit here and talk Pickwick with you guys all night long. But let's get the guy that, by the way, barely missed the top 10 cut.
Yes.
He was right there at 11th, 12th, something like that. He was 11th and 12th were a tie. They had the exact same weight. I don't remember who he's tied with, but Greg DePalma, our guest tonight, he was barely one spot outside of the top 10, or he would have been fishing today, contending for that championship. Let's get old DePalma on the phone.
Let's do it.
You guys let me know when he comes in if the audio is okay.
What's going on, man?
I said, GDP, are you with me?
I am with you. What's going on? What's going on?
Man, not too much, brother. My man finished up a phenomenal week out at Pickwick. What'd you come in 11th?
12th. I tied with Austin Felix. Tiebreaker was biggest bag, and he had a little bit bigger bag one of the days than I did.
Okay. So that puts you at 12. So 2 spots out of the top 10. Great tournament. That's a great finish. Obviously, we were just kind of going over the recap of what happened on Pickwick and with the folks here, and just give a big shout out to Brandon Lester for an amazing win. He kind of dominated and, to some degree ran away with it a little bit, winning by 6 or 7 pounds today. Great job by him. But instead of us trying to break down what was happening at Pickwick, how about we start this interview with you, GDP? Man, tell us what you saw on Pickwick, how it was fishing, and kind of what it took to win the tournament.
Yeah, it was a different Pickwick this time around for sure. One thing I can tell you, man, that I have noticed myself, especially in Tennessee, talking like Chickamauga, Pickwick, the pressure alone, I think just from locals. So many tournaments, it's really changing the dynamics of how these places fish. Even at Fork, I can tell you from my experience, Fork is just in a different class. I never was there before when Fork was, just tremendously phenomenal. Well, big fish that are just, constantly being caught. It's still really, really good, but I can tell you just from when I started going there 4 years ago, I can still see a little difference there myself. So that being said, man, just trying to find schools and practice was a lot harder than normal for Pickwick. You saw a lot of guys who were finesse fishing, and if they weren't finesse fishing, they were doing kind of a reaction, burning a crankbait.
Yeah.
One thing we did not have in our favor was the current situation. They were not pulling any current. There really hasn't been any rain there. They're only pulling like 18,000 the last 2 days of the tournament, which is nothing. Typically on Pickwick, if you pull 80,000, they bite really good. So just give you an idea how off they were pulling. A lot of different patterns, but fish small for the most part. It was almost like a bet, man. I was so surprised that when I pulled into where I fished at the whole entire event, day one, I was boat 78, and I was so surprised that I had it to myself for the most part because on them kind of lakes, it's almost impossible. It seems
Right.
like, but pattern-wise, it was mostly a post-spawn deal. It seemed like a lot of the fish that all of us guys were weighing in were, post-spawn looking kind of run down a little bit. There was some pretty healthy fish that must have spawned earlier. There was no shad spawn. I was kind of thinking there was going to be a little bit of that, but there wasn't. But it was a graphing tournament, more or less what it came down to. There was only 2 or 3 guys that I know that fished shallow and still did pretty well. John Cox being one of them.
Right. Yeah, John Cox, I mean, that's like, come on, dude. You can't really compare that to anything else. I mean, that dude is a one of a kind. Like, he does his own thing in his own way. I mean, when you guys were here at Fork, he's in there throwing a spook on the dam. And, I mean, I guide on Fork. I honestly would have never occurred to me to go throw a spook just down the flat dam bank all the way up and down it like he did. He is very, very good at doing things differently and being successful. And I don't know why, but he is.
Yeah, you're right. I think we actually talked about this today a little bit. Man, I think at this level, if you can truly come to this level and just fish your strength, like solely, let's use Brower, for example. Man, if it was a flipping derby, the guy was always up top, if not win the tournament.
Yeah.
And John Cox, a great example of that. John Cox does fish off the bank, but it's got to be really good for him to go out there. Otherwise, he's just targeting 5 fish, man. That's what he's going for, but he's going to do it his way. And at this level, if you can figure out and have the confidence in yourself to go do what you want to do versus what it always takes to win tournaments on the bodies of water, a lot of times it'll actually put you ahead, believe it or not.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of similarities fishing those pressured lakes on the Tennessee River and fishing Lake Fork when it comes to the way that the pressure affects the fish? I mean, I know for me on Lake Fork, I've got to really, it's hard to do when you guide there year after year like I do, but I've really got to try to put history out of my mind, block it out, graph new structures, go searching with my electronics this time of year in new areas that maybe I've never fished or haven't fished in a long time or haven't seen fish in a while. I've always feeling like I've got to keep an open mind. Do you find some similarities on the Tennessee River on those lakes, Kentucky Lake, Pickwick, all those like that?
I do. The biggest thing nowadays, honestly, is, I'm a Humminbird guy, so we have Lake Master. Lake Master helps me a lot because a lot of the fish that are relating to things nowadays are stuff you normally wouldn't even graph. I mean, the contour lines, it doesn't even have to be anything that's like, stick out by no means. It could just be the tiniest little swiggle mark on a contour. And a lot of the fish nowadays are using stuff like that. And, if we come somewhere, a lot of times, normally it's one on areas that usually aren't community holes most of the time because the guys are scanning stuff that's not what you're looking for basically on a map. And that's what I think is kind of the separator a lot of times because not only is it us, but us guys are starting to see that the fisheries are so pressured.
Yeah.
That is what you literally have to do nowadays to get yourself ahead a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to look on some of that, the off the beaten path stuff, the out of the way areas that you wouldn't think of. I know, Chris, you were telling me, I got my buddy Chris here co-hosting with me, Greg. Chris, tell me what you were telling me earlier about Brandon Lester and kind of how he happened on that spot or what you heard.
So the story goes, he was one of the last boats to take off day one. And the way he told it was he was just making his way down the lake and he was having to bypass all the stuff that he would normally stop on and fish because there was, already boats on it and stuff like that. And so he just kept making his way down the lake. And then finally, he settled in on the spot that he ended up spending 4 days on. He ended up finding kind of a spot within a spot with that little hard spot. And that's just where he spent the 4 days.
So he just he randomly ended up on that area because he couldn't get on the spots he wanted to fish. And
exactly.
He ends up on an area he didn't even look at, and he ends up winning the tournament. So kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, he said he'd never graphed this spot at practice. He said in practice, he had gone over this spot, and it wasn't anything that would necessarily make him stop on any other day. Mm-hmm. He said there was probably 6 to 8 fish on the spot. He said he marked it and rolled, and that was the first spot that he rolled up to.
Yeah.
Day one that didn't have any boats on it, and he ended up having it to himself the whole tournament.
And that's really funny because now that's 2 in a row because as much as Lee Livesey knows Lake Fork, the spot that he wanted on, which when I was watching the tournament, I was blown away he was fishing there. And he's even said after the tournament, it was a spot he's never really fished. So now we've seen 2 tournaments in a row on pressured fisheries where guys are fishing off the wall stuff like you were just talking about, Greg, and win the tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot more to graphing too that I think most guys, even guys that graph a lot, there's a lot more to it. You kind of just have a little part of it. Even if you graph something and you see like maybe 4 or 5 fish down there, a lot of times, man, there's usually 15 or 20.
Yeah.
Yes. A lot goes along with the angle you're graphing.
Sure.
If you guys are listening, I know a lot of your viewers are guys that do graph. One thing that can help you guys out, give you guys a little tip is actually graph opposite. Don't graph like up the break, graph off the break. Sometimes you get a lot better shot shooting down than you would shooting up like you normally would do. A lot of guys will approach a point from deep water, going at it, go to shallow water, shooting out, and a lot of times you can see a lot more you're looking at.
Yeah, for me, Greg, and I don't know, you can tell me this, I could be completely wrong. I'm by no means an electronics expert of any kind, but man, I will actually graph probably more than most guys do a lot of times when I'm out looking for fish and graphing. I'll go in a snake pattern, up a point or across the point, and then I'll go the opposite direction and snake pattern it again. But all I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm covering every inch and seeing every part of that structure where those fish could possibly be on. Because like you said, nowadays they do get on different stuff with the advancement of electronics. So many more people being good offshore fishermen because of our electronics. These fish will get on the side of the point instead of the crest of it, or wherever a hard spot is, like Brandon Lester referred to. I mean, they get on some weird sections of even obvious main lake structures, and like you said, they get on non-obvious stuff. So I graph really, really thoroughly, making an S-curve all the way up and then going side to side in an S-curve as well.
Yeah, you really truly. Here's a good rule of thumb for myself. So if I do a graph, I graph a line, and let's say that I maybe saw something, or I think I saw something that was like iffy, that might have been some fish right there. The grid pattern is never a bad choice because it just gives you 5 or 6 different angles to hit something at. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
And the other side of it is too, like there's a lot more to it. Like if you guys, probably a lot of guys run the graph on auto as far as distance, and honestly. The only problem with auto, the units nowadays, no matter what company it is, they're all very, very good.
Right.
But the only issue is like a fish at 50 feet is going to look a hell of a lot different than a fish at 80 or 100 feet. Correct. So you have to understand, when you're graphing on distance, you have to understand if you're at 100, that 3-pound bass is going to look a lot smaller than it would at 50 feet.
Yes.
So you have to really understand your electronics. When I was on Eufaula, 2 years ago, I guess it was, we had like maybe 12, 13 hours of daylight. I never threw a cast that entire practice. All 3 days I graphed, for 13 hours a day, but you get so locked into what you're looking for, it kind of makes a difference. And even today, I'm still learning every time I go out there. I mean, it never stops. But man, if you want to be truly at Lake Fork, especially if you want to be one of them guys that really stands out, I can tell you that the investment is worth the investment to get to electronics.
Yeah, and then spend the time on them to get proficient and confident, right?
You have to.
That's the deal. The time, it's just like time on, like we've always heard, time on the water, no substitute for time on the water, and that's always been true. And that's true with your electronics too. There's no substitute for the time you spend staring at those electronics and then fishing what you see. I mean, even when you're not catching them, marking structures, marking brush piles, and being able to hit those accurately with, using your electronics, man, there's no substitute to becoming an expert at that stuff. And you have to if you want to be good, like Greg's saying. Greg, I did want to ask you, speaking of Fork and your experiences here, man, when you guys were here in the fall of 2020, you had a phenomenal day one, not even a day one, but like hour one of day one. It was just amazing. And I'm kind of up to speed on where you were and kind of how you did it. But you fell victim to what I like to call just general average Lake Fork situation where you went in there on the first day and had a school of fish that fired and had 20 some odd pounds in a tough fall event in like an hour. I mean, you raced out to the lead ahead of everybody. Then the next day, those fish just kind of left you, did they not?
Yeah, so that was, my deciding factor on why to leave them and not. So what happened was, it was the second day of practice in the fall, and I went in the back there. What's the name of that running creek? I went to the back of Running Creek.
Yeah.
And when I actually came out, they were positioned. They were sitting there. I saw probably like maybe 20 or 30 sitting down there, and I was like, okay. So last day of practice, I just did idle through there. Saw they were still there. So I was like, well, they've been there for 2 days in a row. The third day they should be there. So I get there day one of the tournament, and I probably caught maybe 15 or 20 off of it, but there was still on my 360. I mean, there had to be another 30 weeks down there.
Yes.
And I lost one that was like a tank too. Also,
there's some big ones up there. There's some big ones up
there.
there.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So my whole thinking was, I stayed there and kind of guarded the spot pretty much all day. But I was like, man, they're still there. I can see them all for the whole 8 hours I sat there. I can see them all just sitting there. They're going to be here. Knowing now what I knew then, I would have just took it for all it's worth. But day two, I go back, there was 4 or 5 sitting there. I caught 3 and then 4 or 5. And then from there, I just scrambled around, one punch, and I caught the rest of them for day two. But Fork's a sticky place, dude. Number one, guys find everything. I was so surprised again that we found that, which was so obvious. I mean, if you're driving through that bridge, you can see it. But the more I fished there, the more I learned that, man, when you're on something, just take it for all it's worth for that day.
Absolutely. And that's what I was getting at is on Lake Fork, it's so weird. And when I go travel around and fish other lakes when we're filming or I'm just fun fishing or whatever, or fishing a tournament somewhere else, a little small tournament like I do every once in a while, man, I don't know of anywhere else that's quite like Lake Fork and the here today, gone tomorrow, the extreme that it does it on Lake Fork, like it did to you in that situation. And I know those fish, they're setting up on that Running Creek Bridge and that little creek channel drop off right there as you go under the Running Creek Bridge. And they move in there in the fall and they move out and kind of do their thing. And I know the fish that travel up there. When Lee was guiding before he was on Elite Series, me and Lee used to stare at each other every afternoon in the back of Running Creek in October. Like these fish are a known entity on Lake Fork. But man, that little spot that they gather on the bridge, in all the time that I've guided there, I think I've caught them in that area where you caught them like twice. But when they're there, it's like you said, it's unbelievable what gathers there. But then they're just not there sometimes. And do you have any idea what makes Fork that way? It just seems to be that way.
Man, there's really, I'm not sure, because generally when them fish move like that, it's usually 2 things. Number one, it's current driven, or number 2, it would be bait. Being the fall, the only answer I can say, the bait was there one day and called the next, and the fish followed it.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a unique deal, so I just wanted to touch on you with that. Now, next thing is, man, you're a guy from the Northeast. You're from the Jersey area. Coming into the Elite Series, is being from that area, and I don't know exactly where you're from or how urban or rural it was, But being from that area, was Mike Iaconelli like? Was he your deal? Was he like a guy that you looked up to immensely before you got on the Elite Series?
Yeah, he was by far number one for sure. Yep.
Yeah. So fast forward now, Ike is requalified for the Elite Series. Dude, you're traveling with Iaconelli. What is it like to tour with a dude that you spent most of your life looking up to and kind of idolizing?
Yeah, it's still kind of like it's still, I don't know use the word refer Joe, but it's still pretty damn neat. It's fully the definition of full circle for sure. You know, being a kid that always dreamed about fishing professionally, and then like you just said, you know, the one guy that I still to this day, he's got a YouTube thing he does right now. You know, kind of like the whole Mike Iaconelli, you know, whole like beginning till now. I still watch all this stuff, man. You know, I'm still a big fan of the sport. I'm still a giant fan of Mike. None of that has ever changed, but I don't know, man. It's like a dream come true. I'm living a dream, truly.
Now, the real question we want to know, what dirt can you give us on Ike on the road? Like, tell us, like, the real story of Ike. Like, what's something about Iaconelli that nobody knows?
He's not crazy. He's a really genuine guy. I think he's pretty crazy. He's actually pretty quiet. He's humble. He's just one of the Jersey guys, man. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have any bad dirt to say the least. I mean, I fished against them. So growing up in New Jersey, so where me and Mike live at, it's very country. We're down the bottom of New Jersey. So Mike always fished. Whenever he was home, he always fished all local derbies back at home all the time. So I've been fishing against Iaconelli for years.
Oh, okay.
I mean, years and years. And the crazy part is, me and Ike would always fish the same spots on all these lakes. Because we kind of have the same exact style, so we were always like kind of like bumping heads in the creeks and stuff. You know, not in a bad term, but we were always boat to boat or racing to get there. But it's just been really cool, man.
Man, that's awesome, dude. And you know, I've always heard that about Iaconelli. He's got this out there persona on the water. He yells about fish and headbutts. You know, he's just done a lot of things over the years. Never give up. All this enthusiasm and excitement that pours out of him in a bass boat. And I've always heard, and then the couple times that I've actually met him face to face, one, you were present for at Lake Fort Marina when you guys were here. But every time I've ever seen him in person, which has only been a couple times over the years, he is the antithesis of what you see in the bass boat. He is, like you said, a very quiet, calm demeanor, very nice, talk to anybody. He's a very open guy that it's a little bit surprising when you meet him. He's just not high-strung at all.
Yeah, I think Mike would truly give you a shirt on his back. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
You know, he'd help anybody, it seems like. And that goes a long way, man. I've heard so many stories from people over the years saying, man, I met Iaconelli, he was doing an interview, and I walked up, he stopped the interview just to say hi to me. Yeah. You know, that's who Mike is. And that's
says a lot.
Mike just had his big Foundation tournament today on the Upper Bay. You know, that's for a bunch of kids. I mean, all the money goes right to kids. I mean, he does a lot of stuff for sport, more than pretty much anybody else does, honestly.
Yeah, great, man. That's great, dude. Chris, I think Chris has a question. Now, he's our out-of-the-box thinker here at this podcast that we do. So Chris has got a question for you that he wants to ask you.
What do you got?
So, if you had to pick a Top Gun style sand volleyball doubles partner from the Elite Series, who are you picking?
Oh man, I gotta think about this one.
Yeah, I have the ability of making people go, man, I never thought of that.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm trying to think who's in good shape. It would not be John Cox. No offense, John.
I don't think John could jump out of his shoes, brother.
I don't think John would take offense to that either. He'd be like, I don't got time for that anyways. I'm gonna be flipping some weeds.
Man, you know, it's kind of weird, but for some reason I'm thinking like Hank Cherry a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because I mean, Hank's actually built pretty good. I mean, he's in shape really well, and the other person's in shape really good too. If you count Summerall, he'd probably be a good pick for it.
That'd probably be the one I would go with because he does power cleans and
he ain't got to jump to spike nothing.
Yeah, but he can though. He can jump.
Yeah, I think he can jump. I've seen him jump off his boat to a dock that's pretty far one day.
Yeah, he's an athletic looking dude, and dude, like I said, he's always lifting and doing all that. What do they call it? CrossFit.
CrossFit.
Like he's throwing barrels in the air, and he's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, I'll take Summerall. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, that's my pick. Yeah, that's my pick. Yep.
And I saw him on like TikTok or Instagram or somewhere the other day. He's got the mustache going right now.
He does. I saw him this morning.
Man, the mustache is a thing. It's a thing.
So I actually texted Patrick earlier today, and he told me he was going to Top Gun tonight. And I said, "Why'd you shave your mustache?
Yeah.
You had the perfect Top Gun mustache at the beginning of the year. Now it's gone."
Yeah, old Patrick.
Now, when are we going to see GDP with a Top Gun stash? That's what I want to know.
That Top Gun mustache?
Yeah.
Not happening, because I'll tell you, I don't know how guys, number one, you got a beard. I can do, number one, I really can't grow a beard that good, but I just can't stand the hair on my face, especially these hot tournaments. Like, I don't know how the guys do it. I really don't. You live in Texas. How do you do it?
Man, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't. I keep my beard pretty tight most of the time. Like, it's a little long right now, but I usually keep it trimmed pretty short. So, but the deal is, bro, I'm just so fat and ugly. I've got to cover this face with something to put it on YouTube every week. That's really the bottom line.
Dude, it took me 33 years to grow
Yes,
a
it
goatee.
did. I've known you a long time. You just got that
I
in.
just got it, so I'm gonna rock it.
You know what's funny? What's really ironic about that, about me having a big hairy beard on my face in the middle of
Is
summer.
you were in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I also, bro, like, I cannot wear one of those face buffs that guys wear, over their face. Most guys wear. You probably wear it, Greg. I don't know. Dude, I can't stand having that on my face.
Yeah, so I guess a face buff to you is me having a mustache or a beard.
Yeah.
But the face buff, you guys are too, but as much as I'm in the sun, I'm just kind of used to it nowadays where I pull the mask up all the time, but, protection is still a big deal.
Yeah,
no doubt.
All that good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
My deal is I can't spit with that thing on my face, so
Because he's always got a dip in.
it'd be a mess. It'd be a huge mess if I had to wear one.
He's always got
a
a
hole in the middle.
Yeah, got to cut a little hole.
See, I was watching Palaniuk today. Palaniuk has the one with the breathing holes. I was like, man, if they could just make, I guess I just got to wear a hunting mask.
Stick a straw through one of them holes and you're good.
So with you being from the East Coast, are you taking Biggie or Tupac?
Oh, boy.
Gosh, I really can't answer that question because, like, Biggie's Biggie, but Tupac is just nasty.
Yeah.
And I listen to their stuff all the time, man. I don't have a favorite song, but so we drive a ton, which you guys know.
Yeah.
And I just let YouTube stream so many times, but if you get back to my playlist, dude, it's a lot of Tupac, a lot of Biggie.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue against either of them.
I'm with you, Greg. It's hard. It's really hard. And you force me to call one or the other. I'll pick Tupac, but I don't want to,
It's like asking me for a spinning rod or a baitcaster. I can't pick one because I want to put so much money on both of them,
Yeah.
Is that a deal, man? See, I never use a spinning rod, but I'm not a tournament guy. I fish Lake Fork primarily, and the other lakes that I fish in the region are heavy cover, bigger bass type of fisheries, like Fork in that way, and the water's not super clear. Is that a tournament thing, you guys using the spinning rod more so than a guy like myself? Or is it a tournament thing or is it a regional thing? I guess is what I mean to ask.
So it's a regional thing, but if you're looking to get to the next level, most of the guys that are really good are real good with a spinning rod.
Yeah.
You have to be really good at a spinning rod. I can tell you this. I think if you locked a spinning rod in your hand the entire Elite Series season, I think you could win that year off of that versus locking a baitcaster in your hand. And the reason I say that is because, like we just talked about, pressure, man, it's a big deal. Like all the fish I caught at Pickwick this week, every one was on a drop shot. And I could see the fish down there. I was fishing. So in the morning, I was fishing in front of a contour, and then I'd slide off with the fish when the sun got high there and going to this handful of stumps that were down there. And dude, I was literally throwing 30 casts per stumps, and I finally get I can see them down there on Mega Live, and I just keep casting, and I finally get one. If I was flipping a jig or something like that, I probably would never caught any of them fish.
Really? Yeah.
But I've also noticed too. I guess it's been in the last couple years. I see a lot of guys on tour throwing the spinning rod a lot more. It seems like, but it doesn't seem like they're using as light a line as they used to. Almost like it's a power type.
Power finesse?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is true. Think about Fork, for example. You guys probably, the lowest you might go on, usually a baitcaster's maybe 16, or you guys don't go past 20, I don't know. But
Man, I've thrown 12 sometimes, but it's got to be...
Pretty unique circumstance to throw 12. Pretty much
Yeah.
15 is the bottom end.
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, you're throwing a spinning rod break a 4.0, 12 to 15 pound test, in reality, you're still a finesse technique.
Correct.
In my eyes. You know, if you're dropping down to like a 6 or 4 like Taco does, that's a whole different level. You know, that's on a place that you can't get a bite. They're from Japan, where they come from. There's only 5 fish in the entire lake, so they got to catch one.
Right.
But you know, here in the States, I throw a 12-pound probably on a spinning rod or in anything, whether it's a shaky head, a drop shot. As far as largemouth, shaky head, drop shot, Texas rig, you know, some of them matters. I throw 12 almost across the board. But I do throw 10 and 8 a lot also, but not nowhere near as 12.
So are the days of the 4 and 6 pound line, are those kind of gone now?
No, if anything, them days are going to be coming shortly. That's how I feel.
Gotcha.
Because forward-facing sonar has put a tremendous amount of pressure on these fish, and the only thing that's going to change to the next level would be dropping down even more line size.
Okay.
Yep. So being a northern guy, I can tell you this. So smallmouth, I'm going back way before we ever had good mapping, or we used 2D sonar. But Lake Erie, for example, dude, I've been out there so many times on certain days where if you're throwing 8, you're not getting bites. You got to get out to a 6. Like it really makes that big of a difference sometimes.
Do you think that's a clear water circumstance, or do you think that's something that'll the lighter line will even play? You know, around here where the water's more stained in most of our fisheries, do you think that the lighter line will play just as big a factor, or do you think that's more for the clear water fisheries?
So it's for a couple of reasons. Clear water obviously can justify why, but okay, so if you go to a lighter line, it's going to allow your bait to have a lot more action to it.
Yeah.
So there's 2 sides of it too, and I'm going to kind of throw out a little handbreaker too. But St. Clair, for example, a lot of times on St. Clair, I would drop shot with 12-pound test, and the reason I drop shot with 12, 15-pound braid to a 12-pound fluoro, that 12-pound fluoro, even though it's a heavier line, thicker diameter, it would actually fall a little bit slower. So if I drop my weight down, it would allow that bait to kind of glide a little more because the line would be holding itself into the current a little bit.
Okay.
It's kind of weird, but sometimes going up can give you a different presentation that you would think that you would. I don't know how to explain it, but like 12 takes away the movement, where 6 gives a lot more movement. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And sometimes on fish, having less movement can be the deal, is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Is like, even though it's going up to line size, I mean, it's fluorocarbon. It's still invisible for the most part. But the biggest thing seems to be, and this is a northern guy telling you this, for me, is the action more than anything.
Gotcha.
So for smallmouth especially.
So
but the largemouth, go ahead.
So your line size decision is more about the action and parts on the bait versus instead of the visibility.
Yeah, because I can tell you right now, if I can drop shot smallies on 12-pound test, I'm going to do it all day versus 6.
Right. Okay.
I can horse them that way.
Yeah.
Well,
That's very interesting. That's good.
Yeah, well, the reason I brought that up is because I see a bunch of people boat flipping fish on spinning rods, whereas before you'd never see that.
Yeah, you didn't see that.
You'd see them play the fish for 5 minutes and finally get it up there and lip it. But nowadays you kind of see them just flip it and then they'll run their finger up the line, just make sure there ain't no kinks, and then they'll get after it for a couple more fish catches and then retie. And I'm thinking, there's no way with 8-pound test, there's no way you can sustain 4 fish boat flipped.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's right.
well, the difference is too, like, man, if you went back 10 years ago, fluorocarbon has changed tremendously as
No
far
doubt.
as durability.
Right.
But there's a lot to it too. I mean, the rods, everything nowadays, them fish are 2.5 pounds. You're flipping on a spinning rod. You get that momentum going. It's a different story. The guys you're seeing flipping these fish are guys that have flipped thousands of fish.
Correct.
Granted, anything could happen, but they kind of really know what they're doing. The whole process from hook set all the way to their hand is a pretty figured out process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know people. Believe me, bro. With guide customers, like people see me on videos boat flipping big fish on camera, and then they're my guide customer. They get in my boat and they go to boat flip one, and I'm like running to grab it. No, don't boat flip it. I don't want you to breaking my rod. I don't want the fish coming off. Like, it is something you got to know how to do. There's an art to boat flipping for sure, and you can boat flip really big fish on the right equipment if you know how to do it correctly with their momentum. Transition tonight. You've been talking about up north. Speaking of that, you guys got a little break here, a little time off, and then we're going up north. I mean, what do you see coming up on the schedule? What are you most excited about for the remainder of the Bassmaster Elite Series?
Well, I mean, the St. Lawrence is it's probably one of the best fisheries in the world for smallmouth. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited to go there. So La Crosse, Wisconsin, never been to Oahe either. So I've been to, out of the next 3 events, I've only been to one.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel okay. Sometimes, like we talked about a little bit ago, it's really good to have no prior information because you fish so free. You know, there's not history that can make you think differently. You really unfold it as it happens in front of you, and that is the best way, the truest way to fish. You know,
I'm a
where
firm
you're
believer
just
of that.
you're taking that pattern for the week, and you're just running with it, going with it.
Yeah, fishing what you're seeing in the moment, no preconceived notions. You're making the best decision you can based on the information you have. I mean, I think that is something that, you know, we all struggle to do. All of us that fish all the time, whether you're guiding or tournament fishing, when you're on the water all the time, you kind of tend to pick up where you left off and have these preconceived thoughts about how you're going to catch them before you get there that day. And so, like you said, going into just fishing what's in front of you, man, I think that's a really, really good way to fish. Honestly, I think it's the way we all should be striving to fish.
Dude, I live on a lake. I live on a lake out here in East Texas called Lake Palestine, and it's a really good fishery. And 1 out of every 10 tournaments, I'll do well on it because I cannot get the past out of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, there's 2 sides to the past, and I'll just give you my take on it. So, for example, let me just use Pickwick. I've only been to Pickwick 1 time prior to this week. So going into Pickwick, like the morning of, I was trying to debate which ramp to use because I had no idea where I wanted to start. I knew where the fish, what they should kind of be doing because of the time of year. That's always the first thing I look at. But so I went to Pickwick, I put the boat in the water towards Florence. I literally just saw something on the map. And I was like, yeah, let me start right here. I put the trolling motor down. I turned my Mega Live, and I saw a stump in front of me. In my first cast, I caught a 3.5 pounder. That area is where I spent my entire tournament, on that same little spot.
How about
So,
that?
like, I literally just did it with no history because I did well there last time we were there, but conditions were completely different. We had a 7-foot flood. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
But now going into history, so at home, me and my buddy Mike Sims, we win a lot of tournaments at home. When I'm home, fish
we got a buddy named Mike Sims too.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. So here's the good side of history. History comes into play for me when you're faced with scenarios. If you have a ton of history on a local body of water, generally for myself and my buddy Mike, we can adjust really, really quick because, you know, we've been fishing these places for 20 years. You got 2 guys in 20 years, that's 40 years of knowledge, you know, together. So we take our history only for the sole fact of making adjustments. That's the only reason we use history. When we start in the morning, we generally we go the opposite way of all the boats. So if majority of the boats go to the right, we go left. That's just how we fish because that's just how that's how we fish because that's the cleanest way to keep it free. You know, we don't practice. We just put the boat in the water and we just go at it.
Yeah.
So you use history to your advantage only in scenarios, it seems like. I'm not saying don't fish certain spots because you got confidence in it. I'm just saying let it unfold in front of you and just take it for what it is.
Yeah. That's well said. Well said. You know, looking at, you know, we always look at, you know, we make picks and we do Angler of the Year talk and pick, you know, we did Angler of the Year picks. Now, you know, Brandon Palaniuk is in the lead by 18 points or so on John Cox. And then after that, there's a pretty significant gap between him and, you know, the rest of the gap between those 2 guys and the rest of the guys. As we transition and head to St. Lawrence, Mississippi River, and Oahe, I mean, is this Angler of the Year deal pretty much done with the way Palaniuk's fishing right now, or is it still wide open, you think?
I would say it's over. So, Palaniuk, did he win on St. Lawrence? Yeah, he won on St. Lawrence. We did a crazy run to 1 year. He won there. He would have won, I think, on the Cross, but I want to say that was one of the tournaments where he went to
He
different
fished
waters.
off limits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. He
would have won there, and he knows Oahe. He has been there a handful of times.
Which is a big advantage compared to probably most of the Elite Series. Because for people that don't know, Oahe is as far in the middle of nowhere as you can get. And it is an ocean in the middle of a buffalo-ridden prairie. Like, it is a weird fishery. And it's a huge body of water, which anytime you go to a Toledo Bend or a Great Lake, you know, type of scenario, it's always harder your first time to figure out a huge, giant body of water. You can just fish so much more dead water when you've got a fishery that's that big. Is that correct, Greg?
Yeah, 100% for sure. I mean, it's not deceiving.
Yeah. So you think this is kind of Brandon's to lose at this point? It seems like.
Without a doubt.
I think so
100%
too.
is to lose. I Brandon came into the game. He was kind of squirrely. He'd win a tournament here and there, but he was up and down tremendously.
Yes.
The last 3 to 4 years, he's learned how to fish Brandon, and it's obvious. Brandon makes really good calls every single day. He gets a bite, he'll change completely what he's doing and refigure out how to catch him again. And that's what Brandon's good at.
It's always hard to compare things cross tours with the different formats that we have now. When you're trying to talk about, the greats in the game today, it's hard to compare Jacob and Ott and the guys that are really successful over there to Brandon and, any Patrick or anybody you want to talk about that's been Seth, and the guys on Bass, because the formats are so different. But, Brandon doesn't seem to win as many events as Ott and Jacob Wheeler do. But
he's as consistent as any of them.
He wins this Angler of the Year going away like he might. It's about time we start putting Brandon Palaniuk in the number one overall conversation, I think. Do you think, Greg?
I do. When I think of Palaniuk, I kind of think of Aaron Martins a little bit.
Yeah.
Aaron Martins had a certain array about him, the way he fished. And, I think Aaron probably had more second-place finishes than anybody.
Sure did.
But there's something to be said about that, dude. If you can put yourself in contention to win that many tournaments, you are doing something that nobody else is doing. Wheeler's the same way. Wheeler does win, but Wheeler is usually top 10.
He's unbelievable. Yeah.
Dude, I really think a lot of it's balance, man. There's a lot to it. It's not just time in the water. I still think it's a lot more than that. I think it's time off the water, how you're spending it. It's just, maybe family life is really good. And once you get everything rolling your way, Lee's a prime example. Lee had a baby, he's having a baby, whatever, leading up to it. I think Lee kind of found his groove, and it's obvious he's fishing really good as far as, to win on fork 2 years in a row against our set of guys who have been there now in the past 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
That's still saying something how good Lee truly is on that place. Now, on the other side of that too is, I think if you grow up in an area where Lee grew up there, I almost think, as weird as it sounds, I think you breathe the way the fish think. You grow up to follow how they pattern. You grow up to when they move, you know when to move. It's just, to make the right calls. So that probably helps Lee out tremendously. Not taking anything away from him, but I think Lee has found his groove, pretty much what I'm saying. And I think Brandon, who has proved himself time and time again, is fishing better now than he's ever have, and it's gonna be hard to beat Brandon not only this year but in the future for sure.
He's unbelievable, man. There's no doubt. And it's funny what you said about Lee there and coming from this area, because if you look at the guys, Lake Fork is synonymous with giant bass. It's got a lot of big fish in it, and dude, we've got. That's the thing that I think people not from this area don't understand. We don't just have Lake Fork. Hey, we got Lake Palisade that Chris lives on that'll kick out a 40-pound bag, a 35-pound bag, 35-pound bag pretty
Regular,
every year, with this year kind of being an exception on that lake. But we've got Lake of the Pines where it takes 35 pounds to win every weekend tournament of the spring. We've got a lot of big fish fisheries in this region. And you look at the guys that have kind of cut their teeth here over the years. Kelly Jordan, more big bass wins, big bass of the tournament wins than anybody. Lee obviously catches big ones everywhere he goes. Talk is kind of known for just rolling up on giants. Dean Rojas lived in Grand Saline when he was coming up and fished Lake Fork a lot. He's got the all-time biggest bag. I mean, there's something to be said for these guys that come out of this region. They just have a nose for big bass, it seems like. What do you think?
Yeah, that goes hand in hand when I said, I just think you know how that, fish of that part of the country thinks. If you came to South Jersey where I lived, I would say I'm going to bet it's going to be hard for you guys to get a bite.
Yes.
And generally in tournaments, there's so many times where we're the only guys weighing limits, but we probably caught 20 or 25 fish that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I've gotten to the point where at home I eat and breathe and I know how they think. I literally know where they live, and I think that's the same for all the guys you're saying from Texas. They understand more or less the whole genetic side of how these fish think. Because they grew up chasing it. Their whole adolescence until they got to pro was spent on them bodies of water with the same fish that live in all that part of the country.
How long do you think it takes an average guy? So let's take just the average guy breaks through on the Elite Series, right? Qualifies, gets into the Elite Series. And everybody that gets to the Elite Series level is very, very good, especially in their home region. How long do you think it takes the average guy to acclimate and become proficient at catching fish in other regions? Like, let's say, how long does it take a Texas guy to get good at smallmouth, or a Florida guy to get good up north, or vice versa? A guy like you from Jersey, how long does it take the average guy to get good in the South? What kind of time period do you think that takes?
I would say within 5 years. If you can survive 5 years, that means you've seen a lot of different bodies of water all across the country. You've been up north, you've been down south, you've been in centrals. A big part of it too, there is still an experience side, but I can tell you that fish in the Tennessee River act a lot different than fish do. Let's say, even on Fork, they're a lot different. They're just different animals.
Yeah.
When you go up north, even our largemouth fisheries like Cayuga, like the Upper Bay where I live, dude, totally different fish. The Upper Bay fish where I live, I used to guide on Upper Bay for years, and guiding out there allowed me to. So what I did was I live in Jersey, but the Upper Bay's in Maryland. I used to have a camper in Maryland, so 5 days a week I'd be guiding and stay in my camper down there. But I'd do a guide trip 8 hours a day, and then when I was done, I'd go out fishing some more. So it allowed me to really kind of get on them fish and just follow them. So our fish, it's a tidal system. So if the bait moves, they're moving, and it could be a mile one day on the flat. So it really allowed me personally to kind of follow these wolf packs of bass around. And it was one of the best things I've ever done at the point in my career. I was doing construction, and I felt like for myself that, dude, I need to go full with this. If I want to chase this dream, I gotta do it every day of my life. So I quit work. Just literally, I went in and I said, hey, I quit. And I started a guide service back at home. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you guys maybe the same story, but
pretty similar.
If you're a guy that all of us have a passion inside, and the only true person that can tell you that you can do it is yourself. So if you have any doubt in yourself, then maybe it's not time. But if you listen to this and you feel that way, I can tell you from experience, man, you got to go for it. That's just all there is to it. And if you work hard enough, anything can happen.
Dude, you can always go back and get a job somewhere. Like, always.
This is true.
You know what I mean? Like, you can always go back and get a job and start that journey over. There's some of these journeys that are special, that have limited opportunities. And for me personally, the man sitting here with me co-hosting, we worked together whenever I quit and went into the guiding and the social media end of it and doing everything that I do now. He was telling me I was ready to go for a while, and I wasn't ready to do it yet. I wasn't ready to take the risk. But then, it was just a matter of time for me to get myself mentally ready to go all in, basically, is all it was. It wasn't a change in ability. It wasn't a change in opportunity. It just took time for me to mentally get myself ready to go all in. But then once I did, and it worked out better than I ever could have imagined, and I've never looked back. But like you said, Greg, you got to go. Like, when you go, you got to go all the way. Don't try to halfway it. Put everything into it. Get consumed with it. Let it consume your whole life to get to what you want it to be, and then you can kind of balance your life out from there. For me, I had to go all in. I don't know about you, but for me, I had to have everything in my mind had to be focused on accomplishing that task.
Yep, same way.
Yeah.
Same way. And, for going to Elite Series, like we talked about the first time here, it's the same thing. I feel like I'm using 5 years for example, because in 5 years, if you can survive 5 years, that means you're doing something right. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because
no doubt.
It is extremely
hard
nowadays. It's harder now than I think it ever has been. Every single person on the Elite Series is incredible. If you've seen guys get cut in the past year, it literally isn't because they're not good enough to be here. It's because they had missed opportunities or they lost fish that could have separated them. That's the only difference maker nowadays. It's not about talent anymore. Everybody has it.
Yeah, speaking of that, if you look at the AOY list, which we've got pulled up right now, my little fishing Jamie from the Joe Rogan show is here with me. But, when you look at this list and you start taking into account, they're cutting 13 guys every year now, right? 13 guys every year now. And you start looking at some of the names in that bottom 13, buddy, there's a lot of W's down there. Like a lot of guys that have won blue trophies are down in the bottom. And that just speaks to what you're saying about everybody's good. And when you're bringing in 13 hungry dudes, that guess what? They're all in like we talked about. They're completely consumed with making this dream happen. And they're hungry, and you got 13 new ones coming in every year. Like it is one of the hardest things in the world to stay on the Elite Series. It's one of the hardest things in the world to qualify for it in the first place. So when new guys come in, they're not your average rookie. Like they're ready to come after you for the most part. They may have to learn the different areas of the country for a little bit, but you let them get settled in, they're gonna come for you. It's a pretty crazy thing you guys are doing.
It's crazy, and the other side of that too is, man, the opens. I mean, if you can get the opens and fish three tournaments that are perfect, I mean, chances are you're not just some Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
I mean, every once in a while, every blue moon, there might be one guy that gets through by just having one of them years, but like, it's almost impossible nowadays, just because forward-facing center, I'm just going to say, has completely changed in the last 2 years how guys have fished. Guys that have the talent, guys that were doing it without it, and now they have that, right in front of them, they can use it, and they're only going to get better as long as they apply it. You know what I'm saying? You're not just getting through, and once you get through, if you can make it through the opens, you're a good fisherman, or it took you 2-3 years and you were so close every year, you're probably good enough to stay in the Elite Series for a long time.
So let me ask you this, Greg. I got a question. So you said that you finally went all in and you kind of just started guiding before you took that step to the Elite Series. Do you think that guiding and having the mindset of a guide, got to catch him every day, do you think that played into your success today in the Elite
100%.
Series?
That's what I was missing in my career. I was missing, I do construction from 7 to 3 every day, so my mind was, building houses. Where when I was guiding, my mind was just thinking about, I need to catch fish or have my clients catch fish.
Right.
So that was true the separator for me, was spending that little extra time. There was probably, so I qualified in 2006 Elite Series. I didn't take it. It was financial reasons. And then leading up to 2018, when I fished that year, 3 or 4 years prior to that, I literally missed it by a couple points for all them years.
Yeah.
And that was the years where I started to guide. So like I saw a difference in my fishing instantly. So if you're and a lot of guys that were the old Elite Series guys, a lot of them guys used to be guides.
Right,
Yep.
and that's why I brought that up.
Series.
That's why I brought that up, because there seems to be something to that. It's a very similar mindset, and it's got to be a notch in your belt going to that level.
Yeah.
It truly is. I mean, you guys can speak of it too. I mean, you guys could probably have seen your fishing has quadrupled since you used to fish whatever you used to do, just tournaments or whatever, before you fish guiding.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. Down here in the South, you go to guiding full time, and you're going to be on the water 250, maybe even in the beginning for me, for the first few years before I started dialing back some with my, to have more time with my kids and stuff. Man, I was on the water like 300 days a year. Like that's 300 days a year where I'm only focused on paying attention to what the fish are doing.
Yep.
That's a lot of different scenarios. That's a lot of different seasonal patterns. And that's a lot of knowledge that I'm gaining every single day, 300 times a year, year after year. That there's nothing, as great as all the information is, and as great as, things like we're doing here, this is a very educational opportunity for the right person that wants to listen to this podcast and learn from it and go apply it. It's a great educational opportunity. But the key part is you taking it out and applying it and getting time behind the wheel of that car, so to speak. I mean, there is no substitute for time on the water. Like there is no substitute for sitting behind them graphs and staring at them. At the end of the day, the whole secret to anything is you got to outwork everybody. Like that's, no matter what, you just got to try harder than everybody else and spend more time at it than everybody else, and constantly grind to do that work more efficiently and keep getting better. It's just a never-ending grind.
Yeah. It seems like nowadays, for sure, more than ever, like luck. You won't get lucky nowadays unless you put in that work. Let's just put it that way. Like, scenarios back when I was fishing at home, I'd beat the water at home so damn hard. So many unbelievable things have happened over the years. But at the other side of that is because I was spending more time than anybody else was locally, and that's why I excelled so fast at home, because I was putting the time in. There's no substitution, period. That's all there is to it. These college kids nowadays, and I'm not knocking them, but they're so information driven, it's actually going to hurt them in the long run. A lot of them kids that might break through because they're getting all this information in the opens, this is the only separator. They're not going to sustain a long career because when it comes down to actually putting their back against the wall and fishing, they can't do it.
Yeah. You still got to make the right decision. There's still so many situations day to day when you're on the water competing that you have to make the decision for yourself. It ain't going to come from Joe Blow's text that told you that this is the good hole. Yeah, that may get you a good day or two, but that's not going to keep you consistent.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. Well, Greg, man, I honestly, dude, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I know it's been a busy run for you. You guys got a small break now and then get back at it. But I can tell you this is the first time we've really sat down and talked. We have a mutual friend here local to the Fork area that kind of linked us up. But, dude, I didn't know much about Greg DePalma going into this, but I know one thing after this. Greg DePalma is all business, dude. You're serious about this bass fishing thing, bro. Like, you ain't playing no games.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been that way. You know, my dad kind of taught me, you know, hard work trumps everything.
Yeah.
So I've always been that way. You know, the other side of that too, man. You know, every time we come to Fork, you're the number one YouTube channel I pull up and watch all your stuff because
Man,
you
that's
guys
awesome.
give such exact information. And, you know, for a guy like myself to hear something like that, I can really take a lot of it and run with it.
Dude, I can't tell you how much that means. I've heard it from a few different guys at the level from both tours, the Elite Series and the Bass Pro Tour when they've come here, and that is a huge feather in my cap. It means a lot, so I do appreciate that, man. Greg, go hang out with your family and your friends and have a good little break, man. Enjoy the 4th of July, and thank you so much for taking the time with us tonight, brother.
You got it, man. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Thank you, Greg.
Bye.
Yeah, he can come fish with us anytime.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. Like he might be a little too serious. Like the Joker's locked in, bro. Like I'm kind of like I'm serious, but like I'm gonna poke you a little bit. Like I'm gonna. So what you flinching for?
I wasn't expecting that.
Like I'm gonna mess with you a little bit. Like I'm gonna tap your rod, make you think a fish is biting. You know, we're gonna do something. Greg might throw me out of the boat if I did that. I don't know.
Cut your line on your spool in half or something.
Like,
You know, the
he's
normal stuff.
Twist the drag back.
Yeah.
Greg sounds like he's pretty. No, he's a great dude. Like I said, we have a mutual friend, and everything I've heard about him is just phenomenal, upstanding guy, and he is serious about bass fishing. And you know there's guys like Gerald Swindle that joke, but even those guys, when you get underneath that,
oh, it's all business.
they're not playing.
Not at all.
They're not.
You
playing
don't get
at
to
all.
that level
No.
by being.
And Greg's just one of those guys. I mean, you can tell by talking to him. You can tell by the tone in his voice. Like this is his deal. He's serious about it, and it's why he is as successful as he is. By the way, guys, he came through the Elite Series 4 or 5 years ago, and he's here. And he's in the middle of the Angler of the Year pack right now, give or take, a little bit better than the middle of the pack. Hey, that's hard to do. That's saying a lot.
I mean, you look at the names, man.
Where's he at? The names around him. Okay, Seth Feider's right next to him. Carl Jockerson's right there. I mean,
Ahead of Scott
Bill
Martin.
Lowe and Lee Livesey. He's ahead of Lee. It's just there's tons of guys on that list, and you can go up and down the Elite Series roster. So to be better than half of those guys on an Angler of the Year race, and just to survive on this thing for 5 years like he has, and not get cut last year when they cut like 20 guys. When they cut like 20 guys last year,
It was a lot.
Surviving that, man, that says a lot. So Greg's had a huge success so far in the Elite Series, and I think, honestly, what we talked about tonight, getting used to fishing different areas across the country, he's kind of still in that window where he's still learning different regions of the country a little bit, and he's now starting to get proficient at it. So we might see, I think we will see bigger and better things for Greg DePalma in the years to come, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of AOY, man,
I win.
I mean, to be fair,
I win.
To be fair, I would have picked him if you had.
Listen, let's play a game. We're going to call it I win.
Yeah. I got a 2, a 10, an 8, and a 6.
I win.
Yeah. No, I think both of us, it was kind of if we would have rock, paper, scissors that deal, we would have both thrown.
Right, but this is your Lake Fork guy. Like, I started the channel, so I get to pick first.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
We do usually rotate the picks.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know if that was in the rotation or not.
Oh, no, I got screwed.
It was in the
100% got screwed.
No, it might have been in the rotation. We don't know.
It
like, you
wasn't.
don't know.
It wasn't, I know.
No, you don't.
I know the things that I
No,
know.
you don't.
And that's
There's
one
no
of the
way.
things I
That
know.
was the beginning of the year before a tournament even happened. We had no idea what the rotation was. We hadn't picked the tournament like 5 months at that point.
It was my turn.
Okay.
Don't take this from me.
We'll leave that one up to
I'm salty.
You folks debate in the comments.
I'm
Listen,
salty.
I
Look.
told Brandon when he was at Fork, I said, hey bro, check this out. Like, my buddy, we do picks, and I picked you, and he's like got a huge crush on you, and he is super mad that I picked you for Angle of the Year and you're
Yeah.
in first.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, I hope that I continue to upset him for the rest of the year.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Because as pissed as I am about it, I do not want John Cox to take it over because, like you alluded to earlier, I think Brandon runs away with this deal. I'm pretty sure you have to throw him in the talks of the best.
This deal could be
This could be his breakthrough.
for the most, like this deal could be almost out of reach after the next tournament.
Correct.
Because the next one's St. Lawrence.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon does really good there. If John Cox slips and has a 40th or a 50th, and he gets back there 50 points behind,
Bro,
you're not coming back from 50 points back on Palaniuk.
Look,
Like
dude.
if Brandon Palaniuk gets a top 10, okay,
If he top 10s, I think it's
if
over.
if he gets a top 10 and John Cox falls into the 40s or 30s even maybe,
I don't think
it's St. Lawrence.
Yeah, it's not attainable.
It's done.
All he's got to do
It's
is
done.
make 2-day cuts from there, and it's over.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. He's got to make the cuts. Has he missed a cut this year? He hasn't.
I don't think he has.
He has not missed a cut.
No.
He has not missed a cut.
Dude is a
folks.
machine.
He survived Florida.
He did survive.
He
Florida.
did good because Florida's usually where he was told. He survived Florida.
But to be fair, who's consistent in Florida?
Scott Martin.
Okay.
Sweet.
one guy out of
But really,
94?
he wasn't. He didn't do that great in Florida.
That's
this
what I'm
year.
saying.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be able to throw a handful of guys out
but
of 94.
Scott Martin never like bombs in Florida.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't ever
He
like
doesn't.
bomb in Florida.
He doesn't. But
So
I'm
he's
just,
the one guy I would say he's pretty consistent.
But I'm just saying, who's a guy other than
Bro, and I don't know all these guys well enough to like make the judgment on who's good in Florida and who's not on all of them. But like on the other two, like what's funny is some of the Fort like Talk is good in Florida.
Yeah.
KJ was good in Florida for a lot of years. Kelly Jordan.
I mean, I'm going through the list here, and I mean, really, there's nobody. I mean, Mark Menendez seems to do pretty well in Florida
Sometimes.
sometimes.
Yeah, there's just Florida's hard to be consistent.
It's just, John Cruz is good for a win in Florida every other
Well,
year.
John
it seems
Cox
like.
is good.
And John Cox
He's
is good
consistent in Florida.
Okay, so but what I'm saying is you got a handful of guys maybe out of a 94-man roster
Yeah.
that you can say,
I
yeah, he's
know.
going to do fine.
I know.
So Florida's always that wild card.
Florida's a weird place all the way around, dude. Like, there's nothing in Florida that's not a little bit like, well, that's kind of strange.
Well, yeah, you never.
They've got anacondas floating around in the Everglades,
Look,
folks.
bro, I've said this my whole entire life. You never see a news story come through and been like, well, Louisiana man does this.
No, it's
always
Florida, man.
It's
Bro,
always
if you
Florida
play
man.
that game where whatever date, like punching any date you want to in Florida, man, like you put your birthday in, you put, like, my birthday's March 4th, Florida man, and see what pops up.
And something will pop
It's
up.
always the craziest
Yeah,
stuff
that's
you've
what I'm
ever
saying.
seen.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, what is it that makes Florida so weird?
It's hot.
Well, I get that it's hot.
I mean, I don't
It
know.
just like sticks out off the United States and like this is the rest of the United States, and then down there,
Yeah. It seems
a little strange.
it seems to be South Central Florida too. Every time.
Dude, there's some odd stuff happening in the Panhandle though. Hey, don't sleep on the strains in the Panhandle. It gets a little odd up there.
No cell service. You never hear about it.
Yeah, they can't send the video out right away.
Right. Yeah.
Good times, man. Well, I had a good time doing this, man. Big shout out to Greg DePalma. Big thank you.
Yes.
Big thank you to all of you guys that watched tonight. As always, I guess that's kind of going to do it.
Man,
Chris,
that's gonna do it.
do that thing you do.
GDP.
Is that Dr. Pepper?
Dr. Phil.
That's that Dr. Pepper.
Y'all have a good night. Peace out and peace on you.